Chapter 460 Palace. Chapter 460 Palace. The lords from both camps traced the aura to its source, which was not a far distance away. It turned out to be a lofty and massive palace. A palace? There's actually such a huge palace within this cave mansion. The aura originated from this palace. The lords arrived in front of the palace and raised their heads to examine the palace's exterior. The palace was completely covered in black and was incomparably massive. Within it was contained the unique and widespread aura. While this cave mansion is divided into an inner and outer layer, its real core is this palace perhaps, Jian Wushuang mused. He was not the only person who thought so. The lords from both camps could tell that this palace was special, and that there was a high chance it was the real core of the cave mansion. More importantly, if a Dao weapon could even be found in the inner layer, what could there be in the palace as the absolute core of the cave mansion? Everyone became expectant. Enter. Black Yuan Lord waved his hand and was the first to head toward the gate of the palace. Without hesitation, the lords from both camps entered the gate and stepped into the palace one after another. The palace, decorated in gold and jade, was extremely spacious within. The most noticeable object was the towering stone pillars, which each required a dozen or so people to encircle, and on which were carved numerous patterns. There was also a large number of extravagant ornaments in the palace. Look there quick! In compliance with the voice, everyone's eyes turned toward the direct front of the palace. A lofty throne was placed there, and on it sat an apparently middle-aged man who was draped in a blood-red cloak and had blood-red hair. His hands were clasped as he quietly sat upright on the throne with his eyes closed. He did not emit a trace of aura. In front of this middle-aged man with red hair stood four people who looked like sculptures. They were suited in purple golden armor, and their hands firmly gripped huge sabers. However, their eyes were also closed. Puppet fighters. When the experts from both camps saw the man and the four sculptures in purple golden armor, they immediately knew that these were puppet fighters. By all probability, these were extremely powerful puppet fighters to boot. At the very least, they would be more powerful than the gold-armored puppets the lords had encountered in the inner layer. And it must be noted that the gold-armored puppets were already able to rival advanced lords. Look at what's on their hands, a lord suddenly exclaimed. Everyone immediately looked at the palms of the puppet fighters. What they saw caused their pupils to constrict at once. A ring was worn on the left index finger of each of the four armored puppet fighters. Emitting a special energy wave, they were clearly interspatial rings. Yes, every one of the four puppet fighters was wearing an interspatial ring. Similarly, the middle-aged man with red hair wore an interspatial ring on his left index finger. Interspatial rings. The eyes of the lords from both camps began to scorch. Although the entire palace was extravagantly decorated, there were no treasures or opportunities within it except for these interspatial rings being worn by the puppet fighters. It was thus conceivable that the real treasure within the palace lied in those rings. As soon as this idea came to mind, the lords from both camps hurriedly moved nearer to the puppet fighters. However, before the lords could reach them, the eyes of the four puppet fighters simultaneously opened. Frosty and completely emotionless, they looked over at the lords. Intruders! Kill! The four puppet fighters simultaneously began to move after one of them uttered these words in a chilly voice. Four beams of purple golden flowing light pierced through the void, while at the same time, four powerful auras began to spread. These four auras were each no weaker than that of a superior lord. As expected, the experts from both camps felt a sense of marvel but did not feel surprised when they saw the auras emitting from the puppet fighters. After all, the gold-armored puppets which they encountered in the inner layer were already comparable to advanced lords. It was obvious to them that these four golden-purple puppets would be even stronger than that, being situated in the palace which was clearly the core of the cave mansion no less. These four puppet fighters were on a par with superior lords. However, none of the lords imagined that the four puppet fighters would wave their hands as they moved. Swish! 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 Beams of golden flowing light shot out from their interspatial rings. Soon gold-armored puppets filled the palace. Gold-armored puppets! The countenances of the lords changed. Reasonably speaking, the threat of gold-armored puppets was not as great as that of golden-purple puppets. However, an endless stream of gold-armored puppets emerged from the interspatial rings, such that in the blink of an eye, more than 50 of them appeared. This, including the two most powerful lords, Black Yuan Lord and Demon Soul Lord, the faces of every lord from both camps sank. To these two camps, there was nothing frightening about facing 4 golden-purple puppets, much as they had the battle strength of 4 superior lords. But now, with the addition of more than 50 gold-armored puppets, the lords would have to face the equivalent of more than 50 advanced lords. A lineup of 4 superior lords and more than 50 advanced lords was comfortably superior to the combined strength of the two camps. So many. Jian Wushuang's pupils constricted as well. He was increasingly feeling the terror of the cave mansion's owner. Next, he conceived a thought which caused a vast blood river to sweep forth immediately. A combination of his 3 realms suppressed forth. Under the suppression of the realms, the speed of the gold-armored puppets was obviously reduced by a notch, while the 4 golden-purple puppets were similarly affected. These realms are not bad indeed. Black Yuan Lord glanced at Jian Wushuang and at the same time ordered, Loftiness Lord and Iron Saber Lord, make sure you protect this fella. Yes. Loftiness Lord and Iron Saber Lord nodded and immediately appeared beside Jian Wushuang. The two of them understood the importance of Jian Wushuang to Marquis Piaoshua's camp. Everyone else follow me to kill. Our camp must obtain at least 3 of the 4 interspatial rings. Black Yuan Lord's expression was frigid. Let's get moving. Chapter 461 Do It Kill Swordsman. Chapter 461. Do It Kill Swordsman. Boom. Apart from Jian Wushuang, the Loftiness Lord and the Iron Saber Lord, numerous lords of the Drifting Blood Marquis camp unleashed their powerful auras. Led by the Black Yuan Lord, they slashed toward the approaching puppet fighters. At the same time, many lords of the Pale Moon Marquis camp were also occupied. With a snort, the Myriad Islands Lord launched a series of punches to set up 2 sets of formation. Following this, the lords of the Pale Moon Marquis, led by the Demon Soul Lord, also fought their way out. The lords of both camps started to do battle. Although the lords maintained their silence and were focused on the puppet fighters, they had a tacit agreement. They would work together to kill the puppet before fighting each other for those 4 interspatial rings. The lords and the puppet fighters collided head-on. Boom! 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 A terrifying roar reverberated through the palace. It was only for a short moment, but the destruction was immense. After all, even though there were a large number of puppet fighters and their battle formation was very powerful, they didn't know how to work as a team. As a result, they were unable to exploit their battle strength. On the other hand, the lords of both camps coped well with Jian Wushuang's realm and were supported by the Myriad Islands Lords' formation. Although their overall battle strength was inferior to that of the puppet fighters, they were able to exploit different fighting tactics to prevail over the puppet fighters. It did not take long for the lords to defeat a few puppet fighters. Apart from the 2 lords, there were other lords in the different inner layers of the cave mansions. They rushed to the scene to offer them support when they felt the palace fill with their powerful aura. Things seemed to be going downhill for the puppet fighters as more lords were arriving at the palace to join the battle. It did not take long for half of the 50 gold armor puppet fighters to be killed. This pared their number down considerably. As intended by the lords, none of the 4 golden purple puppets were destroyed. This was because the interspatial rings were in the puppet fighters and the destruction of a golden purple puppet would immediately result in a battle between the 2 camps. The lords preferred to terminate the gold armors first, then fight for the 4 interspatial rings. This was the obvious plan. Swish! Myriad Islands Lord's intentions were not apparent, but he had been fighting a gold-armored puppet near the Demon Soul Lord. When he noticed that few gold-armored puppets were left standing, he squinted and looked at the Demon Soul Lord. Demon Soul Lord, it's time now. The Demon Soul Lord stared at him. She understood Myriad Islands Lord's meaning and glanced at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's realm was powerful, and was the sole reason that they were able to quickly defeat and kill the gold-armored puppets. However, when it came time for the 2 camps to fight for the 4 interspatial rings, Jian Wushuang would become a thorn in the side of the Pale Moon Marquis camp. To draw an analogy, Jian Wushuang would be like a fishbone stuck in a throat. If they couldn't get rid of this fishbone, the Pale Moon Marquis camp would be in torment. Without hesitating, the Demon Soul Lord dispatched the golden-purple puppet she had been fighting. Inconspicuously, she flew towards Jian Wushuang. At that same time, the Myriad Islands Lord also seemed to lean towards Jian Wushuang intentionally. Jian Wushuang was outside the battlefield. He wasn't directly involved in the fighting, and was focused on using his realm to suppress the puppet fighters. Besides, the Iron Saber Lord and the Loftiness Lord were still in front of him. At this moment, what happened? Jian Wushuang's expression darkened. The Iron Saber Lord and the Loftiness Lord both noticed the danger as well. A ghostly figure had suddenly appeared beside Jian Wushuang. Immediately, Jian Wushuang was covered by a terrible killing intent. Demon Soul Lord. The Iron Saber Lord and the Loftiness Lord instantly recognized the Demon Soul Lord, and also realized her purpose. You want to kill Swordsman? The Iron Saber Lord snorted. He waved his sleeve and unleashed an immaterial wave. The Loftiness Lord held a long purple spear in his hand, but this was just a first-grade magic weapon. It was not as useful as the Dao weapon he previously had. You two can't stop me, get out of here. With a cold voice, the Demon Soul Lord was filled with killing intent. A strange scarlet saber chopped violently towards them. It appeared like a curved shuiyun in the sky. The Iron Saber Lord and the Loftiness Lord immediately tried to parry the blow. However, the Iron Saber Lord was only an advanced lord. Previously, he had been able to fight the Demon Soul Lord because he had the Dao weapon in his possession. Without it now, it was difficult for him to oppose her. It was impossible for them to stop the Demon Soul Lord, who was an expert at the level of Superior Lord. Clang! Clang! A collision was heard, followed by the Iron Saber Lord and the Loftiness Lord being attacked and thrown sideways. The Demon Soul Lord paused for a moment, then rushed towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang made use of the Demon Soul Lord's pause to unleash the triple shift. His figure transformed into a residual shadow and retreated. As Jian Wushuang retreated, he stared coldly at the Demon Soul Lord. Abruptly, Jian Wushuang felt a chill. Instinctively, he turned his head and discovered that someone had appeared behind him. That person was the Myriad Islands Lord. The Myriad Islands Lord realized Jian Wushuang's purpose, and gave him a menacing grin. The Myriad Islands Lord stretched out his palm slowly and a flash of silver light flew towards Jian Wushuang. What's that? Jian Wushuang was shocked. He was soon able to see it clearly. The silver light was a bead. Ninth Heaven Thunderbolt. The Iron Saber Lord and the Loftiness Lord also saw the silver bead, and their expressions changed dramatically. Chapter 462 Fury. Chapter 462 Fury. Ninth Heaven Thunderbolt was a kind of thunderbolt. Its power was much greater than that of Purple Heaven Thunderbolt. Ninth Heaven Thunderbolt was also extraordinarily violent. Usually, a single flash could eviscerate a novice lord. Refining Ninth Heaven Thunderbolt into a bead to concentrate its power would result in even more massive destruction. Jian Wushuang had exploited demonic grenade once in the Nanyang continent. At that time, he had refined the thunderbolt to a bead, so that its power could explode instantly. However, demonic grenade's power paled in comparison to Ninth Heaven Thunderbolt. That's Ninth Heaven Thunderbolt. A few lords from both camps who were nearby also noticed it. When they realized that Myriad Islands Lord had thrown a Ninth Heaven Thunderbolt bead, they were terrified and were worried for Jian Wushuang. A Ninth Heaven Thunderbolt bead explosion next to an advanced lord would kill him easily. Even a superior lord would suffer terrible injuries unless his physical strength matched the Black Yuan lords. However, Jian Wushuang was only in the Saint realm. It was almost impossible for him to survive the Ninth Heaven Thunderbolt. Boy, you are only in the Saint realm. You should feel lucky to be killed by a Ninth Heaven Thunderbolt bead. The Myriad Islands Lord smiled coldly. It seemed that he was picturing Jian Wushuang's demise by the Ninth Heaven Thunderbolt. Myriad Islands Lord's move was unexpected. The Drifting Blood Marquis camp were aware that the Pale Moon Marquis would seek a chance to attack Jian Wushuang. That was why the Black Yuan Lord, The Iron Saber Lord and the Loftiness Lord worked together to protect him. However, no one had expected that the Pale Moon Marquis would be so cunning. They had let the Demon Soul Lord, a superior lord, distract him while the Myriad Islands Lord sneaked up on him. This ruse had worked well. The Demon Soul Lord had been held back by the Iron Saber Lord and the Loftiness Lord for a short moment, but no one was able to stop Myriad Islands Lord's Ninth Heaven Thunderbolt bead. These events unfolded so quickly that Jian Wushuang wasn't able to respond immediately. When he realized the danger and wanted to escape, it was already too late. Go to hell! The Myriad Islands Lord roared. The Ninth Heaven Thunderbolt emitted dazzling silver light and exploded. A tremendous power erupted in the palace. The explosion rocked the big cave mansion with a deafening and terrifying noise. The energy released was strong enough to easily outclass and kill an advanced lord. Being less than a meter away from the explosion, Jian Wushuang was exposed to more than 90% of its power. Boom! Visible residual waves from the explosion billowed from its epicenter and propagated through the palace, affecting most of the lords. Many had to close their eyes. After a long time, the palace settled down. Things came to a close. The lords of both camps looked at the place where Jian Wushuang had been. Is he dead? Everyone was thinking the same thing. Swordsman, the Iron Saber Lord's face was clouded over. Look at this blood river, it is still here, a lord of the Drifting Blood Marquis camp suddenly said. Everyone immediately looked at the blood river which was still there. It continued to emit the aura, which had not weakened. Instead, it was still rolling. What's going on here? The blood river didn't disappear? Is Swordsman still alive? He didn't die, did he? Still alive. The lords of both camps were incredulous. Was he still alive? Was it possible? The Myriad Islands Lord squinted. The smoke from the explosion had cleared and a figure gradually appeared. He carried a long sword. The clothes on his upper body were split. His skin was darkened, which gave him a wild appearance. Meanwhile, the right side of his body drew attention. It looked slightly red and there were a few tiny wounds on it, but they were obviously superficial injuries. How is it possible? The Myriad Islands Lord was shocked. Impossible! The Demon Soul Lord couldn't help yelling. All the lords of both camps who witnessed this were astonished. He didn't die, did he? He wasn't even really injured. There were only a few insignificant wounds on the right side of his body. How was he able to do that? The power of Ninth Heaven Thunderbolt is intense. If I had been in Jian Wushuang's place, I wouldn't have been seriously hurt, it would definitely mess me up. It is impossible not to sustain any nasty injuries, but this little guy. The Black Yuan Lord looked at Jian Wushuang in surprise as a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. What if his body is stronger than mine? He was not aware that when Jian Wushuang was inside the Universal Thunderbolt Pool in Bayamo Marquis Cave Mansion, he had already absorbed 37 Purple Heaven Thunderbolts. Now his body was on par with a superior second-grade magic weapon. Even among the lords, Jian Wushuang was already incredible. Although the Black Yuan Lord was ranked first among numerous lords of the two camps, his physical strength was just good enough to reach the requirement of a superior second-grade magic weapon. Compared to Jian Wushuang, he was inferior. In the palace, the lords of both camps were shocked speechless. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang's expression was glacial and he was filled with fury. In the icy depth of his eyes, rage burned. Demon Soul Lord and Myriad Islands Lord. You two got a good trick. Jian Wushuang's voice filled the palace. Its cold tone was reminiscent of December's frost. The sneaky attack that the Demon Soul Lord and the Myriad Islands Lord had launched infuriated Jian Wushuang. The Myriad Islands Lord snorted in response. Actually, you are the good one. A Ninth Heaven Thunderbolt bead exploded near you. But it still couldn't kill you. Little guy, you are so lucky. I'm sorry that I disappointed you too, Jian Wushuang said. I am still alive, but I'm afraid you guys will die soon. As he finished his words, he suddenly waved his hand. A scarlet figure immediately popped up beside him. The blood puppet had appeared. Jian Wushuang took out 10 blood gems and soon they were all swallowed by the blood puppet. 10 blood gems would allow the blood puppet to show its full power once. Sword Ancestor created the blood puppet. I really want to know the extent of its power. There was a severe expression in his eyes as Jian Wushuang pointed to the front. Blood puppet, kill the two of them. Chapter 463 Kill. Chapter 463 Kill. As Jian Wushuang dictated the order, the blood puppet transformed into a flash of blood-colored flowing light and flew away. He popped up in front of the Demon Soul Lord. A puppet fighter. The Demon Soul Lord noticed that the blood puppet had rushed to attack her. She frowned but was not really bothered. She had already encountered hundreds of puppet fighters in this cave mansion, including a large number of gold-armored puppets and 4 golden-purple puppets. These puppet fighters had not really threatened her. Moreover, Jian Wushuang was only in the Saint Realm, so the puppet fighter that he owned wouldn't be that strong. Get the hell out of my way. The Demon Soul Lord chopped with her saber. Although it was a quick chop, it still caused a blood moon to emerge and provided tremendous power. In contrast, the blood puppet had only launched a punch that did not seem special. When the two strikes collided, the power from the blood puppet's punch erupted. What? Her expression changed dramatically. The Demon Soul Lord could sense the power from her opponent's fist, but she was unable to defend herself against it. Her scarlet saber curved slightly from the punch. The tremendous power was transmitted from her arm to the insides of her body. Puff! The Demon Soul Lord spat out a mouthful of blood. Her aura was weakened and she sank to the ground. There had only been one collision and the Demon Soul Lord, who was regarded as an excellent superior lord, had already received a serious injury. This is the Marquis battle strength. When the Demon Soul Lord was able to stand firmly, she looked up and howled violently. The howl echoed through the palace and made the lords of both camps stare. The Marquis battle strength. A puppet fighter in the Marquis level. Everyone looked at the blood puppet and nodded to themselves. One punch had seriously hurt the Demon Soul Lord. Obviously, the blood puppet must be at the level of Marquis battle strength. They wondered how someone in the Saint Realm could have a puppet fighter in the Marquis level. Even in the two camps, no one had ever owned a Marquis puppet. The battle strength of a Marquis puppet was equal to Marquis level. In both camps, only the Snow Marquis and the Marquis Tsongyue had such battle strength. They didn't know that this blood puppet was created by the Sword Ancestor, and that it was also the strongest one that he had ever made. This puppet fighter is worthy of Sword Ancestor's name. Before, the blood puppet had consumed only 3 blood gems, so it couldn't really exploit its power. Still, it had easily outclassed a heaven-defying level expert. So, if it consumes 4 blood gems, its battle strength will be on par with the regular level of a lord. If it consumes 6 blood gems, it should be comparable to an advanced lord. By consuming 10 blood gems, the blood puppet will reach the peak of its battle strength, equivalent to that of a Marquis. Moreover, it was the strongest puppet fighter made by the Sword Ancestor. It definitely wouldn't disappoint Jian Wushuang, would it? Demon Soul Lord, you must die today. Jian Wushuang's eyes were full of killing intent. The blood puppet turned into a flash of flowing light once again and rushed toward the Demon Soul Lord. At the same time, the blood river which had filled the palace flowed towards the Demon Soul Lord. The powerful pressure from the blood river limited her movement. Damn it! The Demon Soul Lord looked ferocious, but her expression betrayed doubt as she looked at the blood puppet. She knew that even at her optimum state, she could only flee from the blood puppet. Now, she had already suffered a serious injury, and was also suffering the effects from Jian Wushuang's realm. She could barely defend herself now. Run, run! The Demon Soul Lord turned around and ran. Do you think you can escape? Jian Wushuang clenched his fist and successively launched several punches through the air. As he did so, the vast spiritual power that had gathered in his body exploded as well. Azura secret skill. 18 levels of hell. His voice echoed coldly through the palace. Abruptly, the environment changed. A huge scarlet pavilion slowly emerged. In it, a few ghostly shadows could be seen faintly and they were howling. When the Scarlet Pavilion had completely emerged, an immaterial power instantly spread out. The Demon Soul Lord, who stood below the Scarlet Pavilion, felt the effects of its power immediately. She had been making her escape, but she suddenly paused in the void. It was only a short pause, as short as the blink of an eye. That was the extent of Jian Wushuang's power. After all, the Demon Soul Lord was a superior lord. Jian Wushuang's realm was still lower than hers. Even if Jian Wushuang exploited the 18 levels of hell to its fullest extent, it only could stop the consciousness of the Demon Soul Lord for a short moment. Even so, Jian Wushuang had already consumed 70% of his spiritual power. It was only the blink of an eye that was too short even for the lords of the two camps to do anything. However, it was different from the blood puppet. By consuming 10 blood gems, its battle strength was already on par with an ordinary marquis. At marquis level, its speed picked up as well. In just a short moment, the blood puppet had already caught up with the Demon Soul Lord. The Demon Soul Lord recovered her senses in a couple of minutes, but the blood puppet had already arrived and punched at her head. Damn it! The Demon Soul Lord panicked and she hurriedly waved the scarlet saber to parry the punch. Unfortunately, the serious injury she had already sustained was aggravated. Her scarlet saber was thrown off and she spat mouthfuls of blood. She involuntarily retreated. Before she was able to stand firmly, a huge scarlet palm suddenly appeared behind her. The scarlet palm had been formed by Jian Wushuang, who was driving the road to the underworld. The scarlet palm punched her, stopping her retreat and pushing her back toward the blood puppet. No! The Demon Soul Lord howled desperately. She saw the blood puppet clench a fist and punch toward her head. This time she didn't have any chance to escape. Pung! The Demon Soul Lord's skull was crushed by the punch. Witnessing this, the lords from both camps were dumbfounded. Even the Black Yuan Lord was frightened. The Demon Soul Lord, the superior lord in the Sixth Cloud realm, was very powerful. Even the Black Yuan Lord, who was better than the Demon Soul Lord, didn't have enough confidence to kill her. But now the Demon Soul Lord was dead. Chapter 464 Myriad Islands Lord's Trump Card. Chapter 464. Myriad Islands Lord's Trump Card. The Demon Soul Lord was dead. She had attempted to murder someone in the Saint Realm. Unfortunately, she was killed by her opponent and his puppet fighter instead. Jian Wushuang, who killed the Demon Soul Lord, looked very calm. It seemed as though it had been easy for him to kill the Demon Soul Lord. Soon, he turned his icy glare at the Myriad Islands Lord. Killing intent suffused him again. The Demon Soul Lord and the Myriad Islands Lord had worked together to catch him unaware. The Demon Soul Lord had tried to distract him while the Myriad Islands Lord sneaked up behind him. Compared to the Demon Soul Lord, Jian Wushuang felt more murderous intent toward the Myriad Islands Lord. Myriad Islands Lord, the Demon Soul Lord has already died. Now it's your turn. Jian Wushuang's deep and low voice reverberated coldly through the palace. The Myriad Islands Lord's expression froze, but he did not panic, nor was he terrified. Kill me? Only you and this puppet fighter? The Myriad Islands Lord looked disdainful. He turned his palm and soon an object showed up on it. That was a scroll. The Myriad Islands Lord opened it. At the same time he launched several punches on it to make a few special marks. Soon the scroll was filled with tremendous power. Whoosh! The activation of the scroll caused an energy shield to coalesce around the Myriad Islands Lord. Formation. Jian Wushuang looked at the energy shield and narrowed his eyes. Little boy, you shouldn't underestimate me. My formation is the best in both camps, so it's not as simple as what you see now. It's a pity that I rushed here and didn't have enough time to prepare, otherwise, the Myriad Islands Lord sneered. Jian Wushuang was quiet. He didn't issue any commands, but the blood puppet flew to the Myriad Islands Lord without any hesitation. Boom! The blood puppet had landed a violent punch on the energy shield, with a power strong enough to kill an advanced lord. Its punch landed on the energy shield surrounding the Myriad Islands Lord and dented it. The shield trembled as it erupted with a great deal of power that caused a strong roar. The energy shield was intact. It had not been smashed and the Myriad Islands Lord who was inside the shield was not hurt. Jian Wushuang squinted. The lords of both camps were amazed. What a powerful defensive formation. Even the marquis puppet couldn't break it. No wonder the Myriad Islands Lord's formation is the best in both camps. This defensive formation could save the Myriad Islands Lord. As long as the Myriad Islands Lord has this formation, it is impossible for the swordsman to kill him. Jian Wushuang and his marquee puppet had easily killed the Demon Soul Lord, who was a superior lord. That had stunned them. Even though the Myriad Islands Lord was not as strong as the Demon Soul Lord, he was regarded as the first master of formation in both camps. It would be more difficult to defeat him. The formation looks good. Jian Wushuang looked at the energy shield around the Myriad Islands Lord. He could tell that the energy shield was very unique and it could balance the energy by itself. After the attack from the blood puppet, the energy shield had consumed a bit of energy but had soon recovered. If I want to break the energy shield, I have to directly smash it with violent force. The power should only focus on one spot. However, the only person in both camps who is able to do that is the Marquis Lord, Jian Wushuang thought. A real Marquis, an expert above Seven Cloud Realm, had terrifying power and was also an expert of human being. He would be able to exploit the manual and the unique skill. By exploiting the unique skill, consolidating all power into a single point and unleashing that power instantly, one would be able to smash the energy shield. However, even though the blood puppet was a marquee-level puppet fighter and had marquee battle strength, it was still only a puppet fighter. He didn't know how to exploit the unique skill, wasn't able to focus all the power to one spot. He also couldn't control the timing of the explosion, so he wouldn't be able to break the energy shield. Swordsman, the Myriad Islands Lord raised his voice. You are only in the Saint Realm, but you have terrifying realm and excellent strength. You are already the best of the intermediate lords. Moreover, your body is also very powerful. The ninth heaven thunderbolt exploded near you. But you didn't really get hurt. Now you show us a marquee-level puppet fighter. We lords really envy your ability and skills. Upon hearing this, the lords of both camps looked surprised. Jian Wushuang's realm, his super powerful body, and the marquee-level puppet fighter made them jealous. But Jian Wushuang was only in the Saint Realm. However, we only envy you. After all, you are not a real marquee expert. You want to kill me, but you won't be able to, the Myriad Islands Lord said with a big laugh. Really? Jian Wushuang looked up and stared at the Myriad Islands Lord coldly. I don't think so. Jian Wushuang took something out of the interspatial ring. It was a gold longbow with a sharp golden arrow. The gold longbow radiated a fierce aura. A bow. Noticing the longbow, the lords were slightly shocked. Jian Wushuang grinned and then threw the gold longbow to the blood puppet. The Dragon King bow. It was one of the opportunities that Jian Wushuang had received in the Marquis Beima Cave Mansion. He had kept it with him but had never used it. The Dragon King bow was also a first-grade magic weapon, and it contained great power. More importantly, the bow was able to focus all the power to one spot, and to unleash that power in an instant. Myriad Islands Lord, you sure are confident about the strength of the energy shield. I'd really like to see if my blood puppet can break your tortoise shell with this Dragon King bow. While Jian Wushuang was speaking, the blood puppet was slowly pulling the bowstring of the Dragon King bow. While the blood puppet was only a puppet fighter and he didn't know any unique skills, he was able to follow Jian Wushuang's order to shoot an arrow. As the bowstring was stretched, a terrifying power gathered at one point. The bowstring emitted a few flashes of dazzling golden light. The Myriad Islands Lord who was being targeted by the Dragon King arrow felt its tremendous power. His eyes narrowed. Chapter 465 Dragon King Arrow, Shoot to Kill. Chapter 465. Dragon King Arrow, Shoot to Kill. This bow is a first-grade magic weapon? Myriad Islands Lord's expression changed slightly. The powerful energy shield around him was his largest trump card. Under normal circumstances, even a marquis could not crack it unless he used his strongest skill. Myriad Islands Lord had thought that he could not be defeated by Jian Wushuang, who only owned a puppet fighter of marquis level. A marquis puppet would not know how to use its strongest skill, so it was impossible for it to break the energy shield. But it would be different if the marquis puppet fighter was equipped with a first-grade magic weapon. The bow concentrated its strength at its point. As the blood puppet drew the bowstring and the terrible power accumulated, Myriad Island's lord felt its threat. Inside the palace, lords of the two camps observed the Dragon King bow closely. At the moment, the blood puppet had already drawn the bowstring to about 80% of its full extent. Soon it stretched to 90%. That was the limit of the blood puppet. The power that had condensed on the Dragon King arrow was astounding. 90%? Jian Wushuang nodded with satisfaction. The drawing resistance of the Dragon King bow was extremely high. When Jian Wushuang had just obtained the bow, he had drawn it to 10% with his best efforts. Later, he had found Marquis Beima's opportunity, which had increased his strength, particularly in the physical aspects. This had enabled him to draw it to a limit of 50%. It was extremely difficult for the blood puppet to draw the bow to 90%. Probably, only actual marquises could hold it at full draw. With the accumulated power reaching its peak, the blood puppet suddenly loosened its tight palm. Ziaqiyu. A golden flowing light crossed the sky with a long tail like a comet. Fast. It was too fast. It was so swift that everyone present forgot to dodge. Myriad Island's lord knew that he could not escape from the arrow. He stood still and stared attentively at the Dragon King arrow. Although he had full confidence in the energy shield around him, he felt fearful as the arrow flew toward him. Erring on the side of caution, he operated his spiritual power to build another spiritual power shield around his body. The golden comet dragged its long tail and hit the energy shield around Myriad Island's lord. Boom! The terrible power that had condensed to an extreme density suddenly broke out and swept through the energy shield in a frenzy. Simultaneously, the energy shield tried to resist its advances and released vast amounts of power. Chi! 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 Subtle sounds from the pressure of energies colliding reverberated through the palace. The lords had already fallen silent. Even Black Yuan Lord and others who had been fighting the golden puppet fighters and golden purple puppets stopped to look at them. At the point of impact, the energy shield had been completely dented. At the center of the dent, a sharp light pounded heavily and drilled a tiny hole in the energy shield. The lords narrowed their eyes in surprise. Myriad Island's lord took a deep breath and roared angrily. There was another spiritual power shield formed by his own spiritual power around him. It helped to hold off the golden comet, but was eventually pierced by it. The golden comet encountered great resistance as it pushed toward Myriad Island's lord. After drilling through the two shields, the power of golden comet was exhausted. When it arrived at Myriad Island's lord's chest, its point merely pierced his skin and then stopped. Myriad Island's lord breathed heavily and his whole back was soaked in sweat. He had been really scared when the Dragon King arrow had pierced his shields. Fortunately, the power of the Dragon King arrow had been depleted just as it was going to penetrate his body. Myriad Island's lord felt that he was at the extreme edge of survival. Then he laughed wildly. Haha, swordsman, you can't kill me. You can't kill me. The broken energy shield began to repair itself at a surprising speed. In a blink of an eye, it was completed repaired, and the Dragon King arrow was pushed out by the energy shield. This energy shield had become intact again. Seeing this, the surrounding lords all sighed. What a pity! It was so close. He nearly killed Myriad Island's lord. Only Myriad Island's lord can survive that arrow. If it were us, we would be dead. Even Black Yuan Lord with his strong body can't resist that arrow. The lord sighed and felt pity for Jian Wushuang. Swordsman, I said before, you can't kill me. No matter what aces you have, you can't kill me, haha. Myriad Island's lord was still laughing hysterically. Jian Wushuang was calm as he looked at Myriad Island's lord with a hint of pity in his eyes. Myriad Island's lord, Jian Wushuang finally said. Myriad Island's lord stopped laughing and looked at Jian Wushuang with a trace of arrogance. Jian Wushuang shook his head and sneered. It's too early for you to feel lucky. Well, Myriad Island's lord was puzzled at first, but he suddenly looked down at his chest hurriedly. The arrow had not really hurt him, but it had touched his body and pierced his skin. He looked down to inspect the wound. He was terrified by what he saw. This is... Myriad Island's lord stared at his chest. A patch of white had appeared. The white patch was spreading at an alarming speed and nearly covered his entire chest. Meanwhile, he felt a creepy chill spreading through his body and freezing his consciousness. The patch of white continued to spread and finally covered his entire body. Click click. As the chill condensed, Myriad Island's lord turned into ice. The wind blew. Whoosh! The ice sculpture shattered. Chapter 466, An Unexpected Accident. Chapter 466, An Unexpected Accident. Myriad Island's lord died. He died with his eyes wide open and a terrified expression on his face. The lords of the two camps were silent and they looked ambivalent. They had witnessed the events unfold. They were shocked to their core. A living man had become an ice sculpture in a moment and had shattered into pieces. It made their hair stand on end. They knew that Myriad Island's lord had been poisoned. When Dragon King Arrow pierced his skin, the poison on it had entered his body. But it was too ghastly. Myriad Island's lord and advanced lord had not been able to resist it and had died a swift and strange death. Even Jian Wushuang, who had used the poisoned arrow, sighed when he saw Myriad Island's lord's death. The icy heart poison is much more frightening than I thought. Jian Wushuang looked at the Dragon King arrow in his hand. There was a hint of white on the point of Dragon King arrow, which was the icy heart poison he had deliberately used. Icy heart poison was the most frightening venom that Jian Wushuang had encountered. When he had helped Lung Rushuang refine the icy heart poison in her body, he had obtained 12 drops of venom. He had applied 1 drop to the Dragon King arrow as a secret weapon. The result was satisfying. While Jian Wushuang was killing Myriad Island's lord with the Dragon King bow and icy heart poison, nobody knew that there was a magnificent hall at the bottom of the cave mansion. Inside it, a skinny elder suddenly raised his head. Young Master's aura. Why does he have it? The skinny elder narrowed his eyes slightly as if he could see everything in the palace. Then he slowly stretched out his shriveled hand. The void beside the skinny elder tore unexpectedly like a piece of paper, revealing a huge wormhole. The skinny elder's palm stretched out of the wormhole. In the palace. After killing Demon Soul Lord and Myriad Island's lord, Jian Wushuang ordered the blood puppet to quickly pick up their interspatial rings. With a wave of his hand, he summoned the blood puppet back, and then looked around. He found that the lords of the two camps were staring at him with complex expressions on their faces. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and began to say something, but suddenly, an unexpected accident happened. An immaterial wave came from the void and immediately attracted the attention of everyone present. They were stunned by what they saw. The void collapsed without a sign and revealed a huge wormhole. From it, a shriveled hand stretched out and slowly grew larger. Soon it became so immense that it covered the sky. Space and time froze. The lords were terrified. Simultaneously, they discovered with horror that they had lost their ability to act. Jian Wushuang also could not move at this moment. The hand seized Jian Wushuang as easily as if he were a toy. It then retreated back into the wormhole, which shrunk and disappeared. Calm was restored to the palace. However, the emotions of the lords present were turbulent. When they recovered, they realized that Jian Wushuang had disappeared with the huge hand. In the magnificent hall at the bottom of the cave mansion, the skinny elder slowly stretched his hand and pulled Jian Wushuang into the hall. Then he loosened his grip and threw him on the ground. Jian Wushuang struggled to stand up, still feeling dizzy. He had been in the palace, but he had been unexpectedly grasped by a giant hand and brought to this hall. The hand had suddenly appeared from the void, and seized him with such ease. He had been unable to struggle and resist. Even a marquis would have been unable to that. With mounting horror, Jian Wushuang looked around. He discovered that the palace was nearly identical to the one in which they battled for the interspatial rings. This included similarities in construction structure, size, and even the decorations. The only difference was that at the top of the hall, 2 men sat there instead of puppet fighters. They were both old men. One old man had white hair, a white beard, and an ethereal appearance. The white robe he wore was covered with dust. The other was thin. The thunderbolt mark between his eyebrows stood out. They. Jian Wushuang frowned and looked at the two reclining figures. He could not feel their vitality. It was as though they had been dead for many years. Nevertheless, the thin elder suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Jian Wushuang. His eyes were cold and held ghostly flames. What? Jian Wushuang was greatly taken aback. He still could not feel any vitality from the thin elder. He should be dead, but now. It was him who seized me. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and immediately understood the situation. He bowed to the old man and said, "Respected elder, I am Jian Wushuang." The thin elder's strength was unfathomable. He was definitely an incredible super being. In front of him, Jian Wushuang did not dare to use the pseudonym of Swordsman. Jian Wushuang. The skinny elder stared at Jian Wushuang with his cold and strange eyes, but his voice was cordial. "I'm Di Jing." Hearing the name, Jian Wushuang's heart skipped a beat. Di Jing. Great demon Di Jing. That was why I killed so many innocent people. Without any other options, I had to cultivate it in this cave mansion. I've been here for 1,000 years. Is that so? Jian Wushuang was shocked. Everyone on the flaming battlefield said that Di Jing was a great demon who had been addicted to slaughter. 1,000 years ago, he had massacred innumerable innocent people. Other experts had been enraged and had decided to band together to fight against him. No one knew the reason for Di Jing's crazy slaughter. It's rumored that you died together with those experts who attacked you, Jian Wushuang laughed. Died together with them? Those bugs? Di Jing sneered. Though I was affected by Heart Demon and could only use 1% of my strength, a group of bugs of Cloud Realm couldn't possibly harm me. Di Jing obviously did not think highly of Cloud Realm experts. Hearing that, Jian Wushuang was incredulous. Di Jing is definitely a super expert beyond the Cloud Realm. Probably he's even stronger than the 10 sovereigns in Divine Land. I wonder whether he's stronger than the 3 ancestors, Jian Wushuang thought in horror. Since Di Jing was so powerful, how about Lung Rushuang, the young master of Di Jing? Jian Wushuang knew that Lung Rushuang's father was Di Jing's master. What incredible strength would Di Jing's master possess? Elder, may I ask who you and your young master are? Jian Wushuang could not help asking. You want to know? Di Jing glanced at him and smiled faintly. Listen. I am the 7th war god under the command of Emperor Shao of Tang of the East. Chapter 468 Puppet Master. Chapter 468 Puppet Master. The 7th war god under the command of Emperor Shao of Tang of the East. Jian Wushuang was astonished. He had heard of Tang of the East. It was a bloodthirsty kingdom on the Nanyang continent, where Jian Wushuang had adventured for some time. But he had never heard of Emperor Shao of Tang of the East or the war gods. Why, don't you understand? Di Jing looked at him with great interest. Respected elder, I know the Tang of the East. I've only heard that there is a mysterious monarch, but I've never heard of Emperor Shao or the war gods. Jian Wushuang frowned and said. The Tang of the East that you know is completely different from the one I mentioned, Di Jing laughed. The one you know was created by my master. As for the real one, you've never seen it. If you have an opportunity in the future, you'll know the prosperous Tang. Jian Wushuang was stunned speechless. The Tang of the East on the Nanyang continent was a slaughterous dynasty and country of death. But the Tang of the East mentioned by Di Jing was a prosperous world. Well, it's useless to explain to you, boy, Di Jing said with a wave of his hand. Jian Wushuang stopped speaking as his attention turned to the other figure in the hall. Elder, who is he? Jian Wushuang looked at the old man with white hair and beard, who had obviously been dead for many years. He was the owner of this cave mansion, Di Jing said. Owner of the cave mansion? Jian Wushuang was surprised. I thought it was constructed by you. Of course not. Di Jing said, curling his lips. I'm going to die. Why would I construct a cave mansion? He is puppet master. He seemed to have been famous in Divine Land. In the information he left, he claimed to be the first puppet maker in Divine Land. First puppet maker in Divine Land? Jian Wushuang was intrigued. This was extraordinary. Unfortunately, no matter how strong his puppets had been, his own life was limited. When I fought those Cloud Realm experts in the Flaming Mountains, I discovered the cave mansion, so I chose this place to cultivate in seclusion, said Di Jing. This hall is the real core of the cave mansion, where he left 4 opportunities for future experts. It shouldn't have been discovered yet. You're lucky that I brought you here. 4 opportunities? Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up immediately. Boy, it's too early for you to get excited. The 4 opportunities are accompanied by tests. 3 tests are about making puppets while I guess you're not good at it? Di Jing looked at him. As a powerful expert who had stayed in the cave mansion for over 1,000 years, Di Jing knew everything in the cave mansion. Jian Wushuang smiled reluctantly. Making puppets? Not good at it. He knew nothing about it. That's just it. Although there are 4 opportunities, you can get 1 at most. Even then, I wonder if you're up to it, Di Jing sneered. Boy, come with me. At least there's still an opportunity. Half a loaf is better than no bread, said Jian Wushuang as he shrugged. He followed Di Jing into a secret chamber next to the hall. The test is in the secret chamber, Di Jing said as he looked at Jian Wushuang. If you can pass this test, you'll get a good reward. Value the opportunity. Jian Wushuang forced a smile and stepped inside without a second thought. He saw a vacant ground with a towering figure in the center. A puppet fighter. Jian Wushuang was not surprised to see it. Puppet Master had claimed to be the first puppet maker in Divine Land, and had constructed this cave mansion, filling it with puppet fighters. It was unsurprising that he would use a puppet fighter in his test. The puppet fighter immediately opened his eyes and looked at Jian Wushuang. The Saint Realm? The puppet fighter asked with a hint of surprise. Oh. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and said, a puppet fighter with intelligence. There were 2 types of puppet fighters, intelligent ones and non-intelligent ones. They were very different. Puppet fighters with intelligence were as smart as human beings, but they were usually not very strong. Puppet fighters without intelligence were much stronger. For example, Jian Wushuang's blood puppet and other puppet fighters he had met in the inner and outer layer of the cave mansion belonged to this type. Jian Wushuang had once met puppet fighters with intelligence, such as Jin Ling and Mu Shan in the Ancestors' Land. Human warrior, you're just a Saint Realm expert, so I'll restrain my battle strength to the Saint Realm level. As long as you defeat me, you can get the opportunity my master left in this secret chamber, the blonde puppet fighter in blue robes said. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly in acknowledgement. Are you ready? The blonde puppet stared at Jian Wushuang. As soon as he finished his words, he paused a second and then rushed forward. The blonde puppet bounced forward like a bomb. Simultaneously, a giant axe appeared in his hand. He swung it violently at Jian Wushuang as he made his approach. The giant axe cut the air with immense power and left a bright edge in the void. Nice axe skill, Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. He knew that puppet fighters with intelligence could use manual skills, unlike puppets that could only use physical strength. Jian Wushuang started to counterattack. He swept his sword up and blocked the axe shadow heading toward him. Clang! After the fierce collision, the blonde puppet continued to swing the giant axe in a flurry of attacks that oppressed Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang lifted his sword to resist as he thought in surprise. This puppet fighter's power is indeed of the Saint Realm level. However, his axe skill is extremely delicate. He's barely comparable to a novice lord. It was the test of Puppet Master. It would be impossible for a Saint Realm expert to defeat a puppet fighter of novice lord level. However, it was not difficult for Jian Wushuang, as he could easily fight against 2 intermediate lords at the same time. Jian Wushuang quickly started to attack. How extraordinary the 6-story pagoda was, that its first restriction alone could enable Jian Wushuang to enter the slaughter Dao. Boy, you've won this advantage. Now I'll send you away, Di Jing said. Thank you, respected elder, said Jian Wushuang. At the same time, he bowed to the puppet master. Di Jing raised his eyebrows. He waved his hand and a huge wormhole immediately appeared in the void in the hall. Di Jing's ease at creating such a huge wormhole shocked Jian Wushuang. The latter revised his estimation of Di Jing's strength. Go in, Di Jing said. Without hesitation, Jian Wushuang stepped into the wormhole and soon disappeared. After he had left, someone walked slowly out of the secret chamber. It was the blonde puppet who had fought with Jian Wushuang. He came to Di Jing in the hall and asked, "Sir, may I ask why you said your 6-story pagoda was my master's 4th test?" The blonde puppet was confused. Puppet Master, the owner of the cave mansion, had only set 3 tests, which were about making puppets. The opportunities after passing the tests were also about making puppets. The 4th test had actually been set by Di Jing just now. His purpose was obvious, that was to give the 6-story pagoda to Jian Wushuang. Di Jing remained silent while he thought to himself. Young master is indifferent and doesn't trust others easily. Even I'm not qualified to get her pledge, but she gave him one. What's more, he can refine young master's icy heart poison. So incredible. He's of great use to young master, but he is too weak now. Di Jing had given the 6-story pagoda to Jian Wushuang to help him improve his strength as quickly as possible. He had concealed the truth about the 6-story pagoda's ownership because of his identity. It would be better to keep Jian Wushuang in the dark. Chapter 470 Disaster. Chapter 470 Disaster. Numerous lords from both sides had gathered in the palace. Now they fled in terror. Run! Run! A forlorn voice reverberated through the palace. The lords escaped in a panic in all directions. A red-haired middle-aged man who radiated a mighty aura was in the midst of a frenzied slaughter. He was the puppet fighter, who had sat on a throne at the front of the palace. He had kept to the sidelines until the gold-armored puppets and 4 golden purple puppets had lost the ground. Now he erupted into action with overwhelming strength and killed many lords from the 2 camps. Even superior lords such as Black Yuan Lord were frightened of him. The red-haired middle-aged man was a terrifying marquee puppet. Let's go. Hurry up. Black Yuan Lord growled with a cold look. Behind him, many lords from Marquis Piaoxua camp were escaping swiftly. Thoughts of the Marquis puppet's interspatial ring were banished from their minds. This moment, an immaterial wave suddenly appeared in the surrounding area. A huge wormhole materialized and a figure slowly stepped out of it. Swordsman. Black Yuan Lord recognized him. Black Yuan Lord, what happened? Jian Wushuang asked in surprise. Jian Wushuang took in the situation. A red-haired middle-aged man stood in front of an advanced lord from the hostile camp. He casually slapped the lord, and the latter's head shattered. Oh! Jian Wushuang was terrified. How terrifying the puppet fighter is. He is much stronger than my blood puppet. With 10 blood gems, blood puppet could unleash its full strength, which was comparable to the battle strength of marquee level. However, as a marquee puppet, blood puppet was weaker than the red-haired middle-aged man. Blood puppet's power could not hold a candle to the puppet fighter. Puppet Master placed such a powerful puppet fighter in this palace? Jian Wushuang sighed to himself. Swordsman, run! Be quick! Iron Saber Lord shouted. Jian Wushuang did not hesitate. He ran out of the palace with Black Yuan Lord and his other comrades. They continued to move toward the outer layer. Eventually they arrived at the outer layer. They were able to take a brief respite and calm themselves. The puppet fighter is terrifying. He's so powerful that even a marquis can't fight him. Iron Saber Lord sighed. What happened to this puppet fighter? When we were fighting the 4 golden purple puppets, he did not move. But when we defeated them, he began to attack us, Loftiness Lord said with a frown. Who knows? I guess the master of the cave mansion planned this. Silver Wing Lord curled his lips. Shut up! Black Yuan Lord shouted frostily as he looked at the other lords. Originally, Marquis Piaoxua camp had more than 50 lords in the palace. When the puppet fighter attacked, those lords had scattered and only a dozen lords had escaped. No one knew what had happened to the other lords. Jian Wushuang and his other comrades waited in the outer layer for half a day. Other lords trickled out of the inner layer in succession. More than 30 lords from their camp had survived. I've asked Spirit Lord to tell these lords to leave immediately. Half a day is long enough to escape, so those who haven't emerged must have died in there, Black Yuan Lord said, eyes narrowed. The other lords were filled with grief. It was a disaster for both camps to be attacked by the puppet fighter. Numerous lords had died in his hands. What a tragedy! Iron Saber Lord sighed as he shook his head. Lords were rare and now they had lost dozens. Our camp has suffered a great loss, but Marquis Songyue camp did not fare better. Black Yuan Lord looked toward the lords from Marquis Songyue camp, who had gathered next to them. Less than 30 lords from Marquis Songyue camp had gathered in the outer layer. It was clear that they had suffered heavy losses. Compared to their camp, we were lucky. After all, we gained much in the inner layer. We received a Dao weapon and grabbed 4 interspatial rings from the golden-purple puppets. Each ring must hold numerous treasures. Black Yuan Lord smiled. Of course, it's all thanks to you, Swordsman. If you had not killed Demon Soul Lord and Myriad Islands Lord, we would not have obtained the 4 interspatial rings. Black Yuan Lord looked at Jian Wushuang. Demon Soul Lord and Myriad Islands Lord had led the lords from Marquis Songyue camp in battle, but they had been killed by Jian Wushuang. Without leaders, those lords had been ineffective in their fight against Marquis Piaoxue camp. Right, Swordsman, you were taken away by someone but then you returned suddenly. What on earth happened? Black Yuan Lord asked. The other lords from Marquis Piaoxue camp looked at Jian Wushuang in curiosity. They wondered where he had gone and what he had encountered after he had been unceremoniously grabbed by the giant hand. Jian Wushuang was prepared for this question. He raised his eyebrows and answered, I don't know what happened. I just know that an expert grabbed me and asked me for a drop of venom that I used to kill Myriad Islands Lord. Then he let me go. Chapter 471, The New Lord Arrives. Chapter 471, The New Lord Arrives. Jian Wushuang would not tell them that he met Di Jing at the bottom of the cave mansion. If the news was spread that great demon Di Jing was still alive, it would cause a sensation in the entire flaming battlefield or even the entire divine land. That's it. Black Yuan Lord frowned. Although he doubted it a little, he did not ask anything further. Then they left the cave mansion. Since the powerful Marquis puppet had prevented them from searching for treasures, they had to leave. The exploration of the cave mansion had to stop for now. As for the other secrets in the cave mansion, they would have to wait for the 2 camps' marquises to explore personally. In the huge campsite outside of the cave mansion, the lords from the Marquis Piaoxue camp did not rush to leave. Even though their camp had lost many lords in this action, they had still gained a lot. A Dao weapon and 4 interspatial rings. The surviving lords could receive corresponding battle achievements according to their contributions. With the help of Jian Wushuang's realm technique, Loftiness Lord had been able to resist until Black Yuan Lord came, and then gave the Dao weapon to him. In the fight for the 4 interspatial rings, as Jian Wushuang killed Demon Soul Lord and Myriad Islands Lord, the Marquis Piaoxue camp had been able to obtain the 4 rings. Jian Wushuang had contributed the most, so he would receive amazing battle achievements. 120,000 battle achievements. A flicker of excitement flashed in Jian Wushuang's eyes. It was known that the price for entering Beima Cave Mansion was 100,000 battle achievements, and he had now obtained an abundance of battle achievements, which could be exchanged for a large number of treasures. Spirit Lord stood in front of Jian Wushuang and said politely, Swordsman, those battle achievements can also be used outside the treasure vault. If you need a treasure that isn't in our vault, our camp will try to help you get it, as long as you pay enough battle achievements. He had heard about Jian Wushuang's amazing battle results in Puppet Master Cave Mansion. Oh, Jian Wushuang nodded inwardly. That's right. And there is another thing I need to discuss with you. Spirit Lord looked at Jian Wushuang and said seriously, you know, we've lost many lords in this action, and many of them were in charge of territories. Now they are dead, so those territories of course need new lords. Spirit Lord, you want me to take charge of a territory? Jian Wushuang asked in an odd tone. Yes. Spirit Lord nodded with a smile. Normally, if you have the strength of a novice lord, you're qualified to take charge of a territory. Now you have proved that you're strong enough to handle a territory. What's more, with such strength, you won't want to continue traveling in the flaming battlefield, will you? Jian Wushuang did not know how to react. Generally, Saint Realm experts would travel in the flaming battlefield. Aside from any special cases, for example, if a new cave mansion emerged, the lords would turn up. Although Jian Wushuang was a Saint Realm expert, he was a bit stronger than an ordinary intermediate lord. It would be inappropriate for him to travel around the flaming battlefield. Moreover, he had lost interest in fighting in the flaming battlefield. In that case, I'd like to accept your suggestion, Jian Wushuang replied. I have a list of territories for you. Take a look and choose one as you like. Spirit Lord gave the list to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang started reading it. After a while he made his decision. This one, Jian Wushuang said while pointing at the name of a territory. Bloodsword territory? Spirit Lord said with a smile. Then I'll arrange it for you. 3 days later, Jian Wushuang went to Bloodsword territory with a lord. Bloodsword territory was larger than Iron Saber territory, and its previous owner was a novice lord. During this trip to Puppet Master Cave Mansion, that lord had no opportunity to enter the palace and was killed while fighting for treasures in the inner lair. Bloodsword territory needed a new lord, so Jian Wushuang had come. Swordsman, that is Lord Mansion of Bloodsword territory, a purple-clothed lady, Misty Heart Lord, said with a faint smile. I have sent a message and had those generals wait for you. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. Let's go down. Jian Wushuang and Misty Heart Lord flew toward Lord Mansion. Like Iron Saber territory, Bloodsword territory had an army called the Bloodsword Army, which had 20 generals in it. Those generals held the same ranks as commanders of Iron Saber territory. Normally, Saint Realm experts at Stage 2 held the post, and a few of the generals were experts at Stage 3. Now those generals were quietly waiting there. The new lord will arrive today, right? I wonder which lord will come. No matter who comes, he has to be an expert at the Cloud Realm, far superior to us. The generals were discussing it in secret. They had received the news that their lord had died, and the Marquis Piaoxua camp sent a new lord to take charge of their territory. At this moment, 2 figures slowly descended from the sky and appeared in Lord Mansion. The generals raised their heads and looked at the 2 figures. That's Misty Heart Lord. But who is the other guy? Misty Heart Lord has her own territory and can't take charge of our territory, so is our lord the one beside her. He is the new lord. Those generals immediately frowned. Lords were almost always Cloud Realm experts who were more powerful than those generals. Therefore, as long as their new lord was a Cloud Realm expert or even just a novice lord, they would be obedient to him. However, the black-robed young man with a long sword on his back was just a Saint Realm expert. Chapter 472 Bloodsword Lord. Chapter 472 Bloodsword Lord. Gentlemen. Misty Heart Lord looked at the generals and spoke. This is your new lord, Swordsman. On hearing this, the generals all had an odd expression. He is really the new lord. You let a Saint Realm expert be our lord. Swordsman? I have just come back from the flaming battlefield. I've heard of him. He killed a heaven-defying level expert, Deng Hua. Though he is powerful with amazing skills, he is just a Saint Realm expert. I heard that several days ago, 2 camps lost numerous lords in the exploration of the cave mansion. Doesn't our camp have any other lords? So they perfunctorily sent a Saint Realm expert here? The generals were discontented with the new lord. They only knew about their new lord's previous battle results of killing Deng Hua, so they were surely dissatisfied with him. If they had witnessed their new lord's performance in the Puppet Master Cave Mansion, they would have changed their opinions. However, now they all thought that a heaven-defying level expert was not qualified to be a lord. Jian Wushuang and Misty Heart Lord knew what they were thinking from their facial expressions. Misty Heart Lord smiled while looking at Jian Wushuang. The young man remained silent, but emanated overwhelming killing intent. Then a blood river directly swept out. Road to the underworld Hundredfold Realm and Blood Fire Domain were pulled together and surged forward. Suppressed by his powerful realm, those generals instantly fell down one by one. They tried to resist, but they could not stand up. They were all terrified. Swordsman, this is your realm technique? It's amazing. Misty Heart Lord acclaimed. Jian Wushuang gave a faint smile. If he exerted his full strength, his realm technique could suppress 30% of the strength of an advanced lord. It was no wonder that these experts at stage 2 or 3 were not even able to struggle for a second under his attack. Jian Wushuang slowly stretched out his hand and pointed to the generals who were kneeling in the blood river. Just then, an immaterial wave spread out around them. Suddenly, those generals turned pale and felt as if they were suffering from qi deviation. I pay my respects to my lord. I pay my respects to my lord. All the generals shouted out in terror. The suppression was terrifying indeed. Facing such realm suppression, the generals were unable to resist, which meant their new lord's strength was far superior to a Saint Realm expert's. Even their previous lord did not have such strength. They immediately realized that the young man's battle strength might be superior to an ordinary lord. Therefore they submitted to him. Jian Wushuang nodded and waved his hand. Then the mighty blood river dissipated and the generals all became relieved. Stand up, Jian Wushuang said indifferently. All the generals stood up and looked in awe at Jian Wushuang. His methods had thoroughly subdued them. Fools! Misty Heart Lord, who had been watching all of this, said with a smile, because our camp has appointed Swordsman as your lord, we must have acknowledged his strength. Our camp has affirmed that he is qualified to be a lord, so why did you have any doubts? On hearing this, all the generals could not help lowering their heads. Fine. Misty Heart Lord shook her head and looked at Jian Wushuang. Swordsman, I should call you Bloodsword Lord. From now on, you're in charge of the Bloodsword territory. Since I've finished my job, I shall leave now. Thanks, Misty Heart Lord, Jian Wushuang said while cupping his fist. Soon afterward, Misty Heart Lord left. Jian Wushuang looked at the group of generals, pointed to the most powerful one, and asked, "What's your name?" "Lord, I'm Binghua," the man replied immediately. "Okay, aside from you, the rest of the people can go." Jian Wushuang waved his hands. The other generals bowed and left. "I've just arrived here, so I am not clear about the business of the Bloodsword territory. Tell me about it," Jian Wushuang said while staring at Binghua. "Okay," Binghua nodded. The whole setup in the Bloodsword territory was similar to that in the Iron Saber territory, and there were many families there. Usually nothing special happened there. What happened? Why did I feel that Magic Flame Lord was in awe of our Lord? Right, he must have been in awe of him. Otherwise, he would not have treated our Lord so politely. Oh. Not long after, Jian Wushuang walked out of the Lord Mansion, while Magic Flame Lord personally saw him out. "Binghua, let's go," Jian Wushuang said. Then they left for the Bloodsword territory. Magic Flame Lord finally felt relieved. Oh. On the way back to the Bloodsword territory, Binghua asked in curiosity, "Lord, what did you say to Magic Flame Lord?" "Nothing. We were just having a courteous talk, and I casually mentioned the Dragon Blood Gem mine," Jian Wushuang said. "Casually mentioned?" Binghua frowned. "Right, that was enough," Jian Wushuang said with a smile. "Don't worry, Magic Flame Lord is not stupid. He should know what to do." On hearing this, Binghua did not ask anything further. Soon after they came back, Binghua received the news that the people from the Magic Flame territory had withdrawn from the Dragon Blood Gem mine, and clearly indicated that they would not step foot in the mine again. Binghua was stunned. In his mind, Magic Flame Lord was extremely domineering. When did he become so kind? Binghua did not know that Magic Flame Lord was just overbearing toward the weak, like the previous Bloodsword Lord, who was a novice lord. But when it came to Jian Wushuang, things were different. Even an advanced lord or a superior lord would treat Jian Wushuang politely. Magic Flame Lord was just an intermediate lord, so he did not dare to act in a domineering manner. He even worried that he might piss off Jian Wushuang and get killed by him. The Dragon Blood Gem Mine and even the Blood Sword territory calmed down. Jian Wushuang had solidified his position. The 5th day after they returned, the Marquis Piaoxue camp sent something to him. Finally, Jian Wushuang thought with a hint of expectation. The thing that the courier had sent here cost Jian Wushuang 80,000 battle achievements. Chapter 474 The World Scroll. Chapter 474 The World Scroll. Mr. Swordsman, here you are. The courier gave an interspatial ring to Jian Wushuang. Thanks, Jian Wushuang said and then let him leave. Binghua. Jian Wushuang gave him a glance. Lord, Binghua replied respectfully. Ever since Jian Wushuang visited the Magic Flame territory and made Magic Flame Lord relinquish the Dragon Blood Gem Mine, all the generals had become obedient to Jian Wushuang. I need to do a closed-door meditation. Don't interrupt me unless it's something very important, ordered Jian Wushuang. Okay, Binghua nodded respectfully. Soon after, Jian Wushuang arrived at a secret chamber in the Lord Mansion. He sat with his legs crossed and turned his hand over, where a scroll then appeared. World Scroll. Jian Wushuang looked at the scroll with a flicker of anticipation in his eyes. He had exchanged 80,000 battle achievements for it in the treasure vault of the Marquis Piaoxue camp. There were numerous treasures in the treasure vault. Some treasures were very helpful for experts to comprehend the origin, like the World Scroll, which was considered the most valuable among the treasures related to the comprehension of the world origin. Jian Wushuang was able to afford a treasure valued at 80,000 battle achievements because he had contributed the most in the Puppet Master Cave Mansion and received 120,000 battle achievements. He opened the World Scroll and then started studying it. Meditating for a while, Jian Wushuang opened his eyes with a smile on his face. This scroll contains a whole world indeed, Jian Wushuang said. The World Scroll was similar to the cottage world that he had encountered in the Beima Cave Mansion, but more delicate than the latter. An expert could only meditate on the cottage world once and his talent determined how long he could meditate on it. However, an expert could meditate on the World Scroll at any time. It's a pity that I could only meditate on the cottage world once, but now this World Scroll is more exquisite than the cottage world. Moreover, I can meditate whenever I want. There's no time limit. Jian Wushuang nodded with satisfaction. The World Scroll was very useful to him. He took a deep breath and moved his mind. Then a blood-red figure appeared beside him. The figure wore a scarlet robe and a wicked scarlet mask. He was Jian Wushuang's slaughter doppelganger. In the Nanyang continent, Jian Wushuang's slaughter doppelganger had gotten killed once. Soon after that, his slaughter doppelganger formed again, but he rarely used it. Now, his slaughter doppelganger could help him a lot. Jian Wushuang waved his hand and gave slaughter doppelganger the 6-story pagoda that he obtained from the Puppet Master Cave Mansion. The 6-story pagoda contained 6 slaughter restrictions. The first restriction held 999 types of slaughter occult, which were a shortcut to the slaughter Dao. The 6-story pagoda was precious to a warrior who was meditating on the slaughter origin. The World Scroll was only designed for comprehension of the world origin. From now on, I will focus on meditating on the World Scroll and world origin, and my slaughter doppelganger has started meditating on the first restriction and slaughter occult, Jian Wushuang thought. His true self and his doppelganger worked separately, and with the help of 2 treasures, he was yielding double the results. As he stayed in his secret room, quietly perceiving through meditation, time passed by. In the Marquis Piaoxue campsite, Spirit Lord stood respectfully on the top of a huge pagoda. In front of him, a young man in a long silver robe casually sat on the step, supporting his forehead with his hand. Spirit Lord. The young man spoke in a warm voice. Marquis. Spirit Lord looked at the young man. The young man was Marquis Piaoxue, one of the 72 marquises in the Divine Land. 100 years have passed. Sword Suppression Valley will open again. Su Ming has sent invitations and invited many sword principal experts to take part in this meeting. As one of the 72 marquises, I also received the invitation. Master Su Ming asked me to recommend 3 experts, but it's not easy to find 3 sword principal experts, Marquis Piaoxua said in a low voice. Sword Suppression Valley? Master Su Ming? Spirit Lord raised his eyebrows. He had high status and knew a lot, so he knew about Sword Suppression Valley. Marquis Master Su Ming asked you to choose 3 sword principle experts, so the 3 experts should not be too mediocre, or Sir Su Ming will get angry, Spirit Lord said. You're right. Marquis Piaoxua spread out his hands. Our camp has lots of experts, but as for those who are qualified to go to Sword Suppression Valley, I thought for a good while and can only assign 2 experts. One is Hunjian Lord. He has awakened his sword soul, so he's qualified for it. The other is Tianming Lord. Though he hasn't awakened his sword soul, he is remarkable in sword principle and adept at varied first-grade sword techniques. He even created a powerful sword skill. Those 2 lords are excellent. As for the third one, I've thought of several experts, but I feel that none of them are strong enough to go to Sword Suppression Valley. On hearing this, Spirit Lord said with a smile, Marquis, if the last expert has not been determined, I can recommend one. Who? Marquis Piaoxua looked at him. Blood Sword Lord Swordsman, Spirit Lord said with a smile. Swordsman? Marquis Piaoxua was a bit surprised. Last time you talked about the fight in the cave mansion of the inner area and seemed to mention Swordsman. I remember you spoke highly of him. Yes. Spirit Lord nodded. He is amazing. Though he is a Saint Realm expert, his battle strength is superior to many intermediate lords. More importantly, he is proficient in sword principle and has awakened the double first-grade sword soul. Chapter 475 The Heart-Killing Sword. Chapter 475 The Heart-Killing Sword. Double first-grade sword souls. Marquis Piaoxua's eyes lit up. In Sword Suppression Valley, they all pay more attention to those with a gift for sword principle instead of strength. In the past, most of the attendees were lords, but sometimes Saint Realm experts took part in it. Swordsman has awakened double first-grade sword souls, which means he is powerful enough to go to the sword principle meeting. Haha. Okay, the last expert has been determined, Swordsman. Spirit Lord, go and tell him right now. Yes, my Marquis, Spirit Lord responded and then left. In the secret chamber of the Lord Mansion in the Blood Sword territory, Jian Wushuang and his slaughter doppelganger were sitting cross-legged and absorbed in meditation. He had been meditating for 3 months. Just at that moment, a surge of overwhelming slaughter origin was flowing in slaughter doppelganger, condensing a new mark of slaughter origin on his arm. Now his slaughter doppelganger had 5 marks of slaughter origin. Jian Wushuang could not help sighing about it. The 6-story pagoda's slaughter restriction is amazing. With the help of the slaughter restriction, slaughter doppelganger comprehended the slaughter origin faster, and condensed the 5th slaughter origin mark within 3 months. At the same time, my true self condensed the 5th world origin mark by using the world scroll. Jian Wushuang and slaughter doppelganger condensed 5 origin marks each. Now he had 10 marks total. Jian Wushuang had condensed 4 world origin marks and 1 slaughter origin mark. 3 months later, the total slaughter origin marks was equal to that of the world origin marks. It was all due to the 6-story pagoda. As treasures that were helpful in the comprehension of the origin, the 6-story pagoda was more wonderful than the world scroll. The 6-story pagoda had 6 restrictions, but he was only able to decode the first restriction. 5 world origin marks and 5 slaughter origin marks. Although 2 types of marks can't release power at the same time, my strength has greatly improved from 3 months ago, Jian Wushuang thought with a faint smile. Just at that moment, Lord Bing He called from outside the secret chamber. Jian Wushuang used his mind, then his slaughter doppelganger instantly merged into his true self and 5 marks were seen on each arm. Afterward he stood up, walked toward the door, and opened it to find Bing He respectfully waiting outside. My lord, Spirit Lord came and said he has an urgent matter for you, Bing He said. Oh. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and then went toward the main hall. Spirit Lord, Jian Wushuang said upon seeing his guest. Haha, Swordsman. Spirit Lord greeted the young man warmly. They each sat beside a long narrow table. Then, maids came to serve them some good wine and delicious cuisine. Spirit Lord, because you've come here personally, I wonder what has happened. Jian Wushuang was quite curious. Spirit Lord had a high status. If it was regarding an ordinary matter, Spirit Lord could ask an underling to send a message to him. But seeing that Spirit Lord had come personally, it had to be a great matter. I need to tell you something, Spirit Lord said. Swordsman, have you heard about Sword Suppression Valley? Spirit Lord asked. Sword Suppression Valley. Jian Wushuang shook his head. Since he was a newcomer, there were many things that he knew little about in the Divine Land. Swordsman, have you heard of the Sword Ancestor? Spirit Lord asked again. Jian Wushuang was a bit surprised and subconsciously held his cup of wine tightly. I've not only heard about him, but actually, I'm the descendant of the Sword Ancestor. Jian Wushuang did not know why Spirit Lord had suddenly mentioned the Sword Ancestor, so he just tried to appear calm. I've heard some news about the Sword Ancestor and I only know that he was a super expert in the Divine Land, Jian Wushuang said with a casual smile. Yep, you're right. The Sword Ancestor was a real super expert. Spirit Lord sighed. Now the three ancestors are known as the supreme experts in the vast Divine Land, but thousands of years ago, there were 4 ancestors. The Sword Ancestor was one of the 4 ancestors. The reason for his death is still unknown. After he died, the bloodline of the Sword Ancestor declined and soon disappeared from the Divine Land. Then, what's the relationship between Sword Suppression Valley and the Sword Ancestor? Jian Wushuang held his cup of wine and sipped it with a look of indifference. Spirit Lord continued, the Sword Ancestor was known as the ancestor of the Sword Principle. It said that he had awakened 6 first-grade sword souls, and was the first Sword Principle expert in the Divine Land. He had a marvelous magic weapon, the heart-killing sword. The heart-killing sword. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. He knew the best sword skill that the Sword Ancestor had created was called the heart-killing sword technique. He had kept all its 9 moves in mind, but he was only able to display the second move. But he had never heard of the heart-killing sword. The heart-killing sword is the first magic weapon of the Sword Principle. It's so powerful that it could easily kill a marquis just by using its own sword essence. Ever since the Sword Ancestor died, his corpse and treasures have become a mystery. No one knows where they are. He only left the heart-killing sword in Sword Suppression Valley, and his personal disciple, Su Ming, has been guarding there, Spirit Lord said. Jian Wushuang was shocked. Su Ming? The Sword Ancestor's personal disciple? Jian Wushuang asked as he looked at Spirit Lord. Right? Spirit Lord nodded with a smile. Thousands of years ago, Sword Ancestor traveled around the Divine Land and no one was able to match him. Su Ming was one of his personal disciples and also the most excellent one. Now Master Su Ming is one of the 9 sovereigns in the Divine Land. Upon hearing that, Jian Wushuang was no longer able to remain calm. Chapter 476 A Trip to Sword Suppression Valley. Chapter 476. A Trip to Sword Suppression Valley. Su Ming is one of the 9 sovereigns and a personal disciple of the Sword Ancestor. After the Sword Ancestor died, the bloodline of the Sword Ancestor collapsed. Countless experts, including the Sword Ancestor's personal disciples and 7 Sword Emperors, were killed. If Su Ming really is the Sword Ancestor's personal disciple, how can it be impossible that he has survived? Unless... Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and thought of one possibility. When he was in the Ancestor's land, Mu Shan mentioned a traitor of the bloodline of the Sword Ancestor. Mu Shan said the traitor memorized all the 9 moves of the heart-killing sword technique. Although Mu Shan casually talked about it, Jian Wushuang still kept that in mind. Now the young man started wondering if Su Ming was the traitor. Spirit Lord did not know what Jian Wushuang was thinking about and continued speaking. As the first magic weapon of the Sword Principle, the heart-killing sword is extremely powerful. Except for the Sword Ancestor, no one is able to control it. What's more, the heart-killing sword is a sword of killing with a mighty killing intent. Master Su Ming could only suppress it in Sword Suppression Valley. By the way, that's why the valley has such a name. The heart-killing sword usually remains quiet, but it shakes violently every 100 years. Even Sir Su Ming is unable to suppress it. However, when its sword essence sweeps out and thousands of swords salute, it will be a precious opportunity for any sword principal warrior. Thousands of swords salute? Jian Wushuang asked in surprise. Sir Su Ming is broad-minded. He will invite many sword principal experts to Sword Suppression Valley before the heart-killing sword shakes violently. This time Sir Su Ming also invites sword principal experts to this meeting, Spirit Lord said. Our Marquis is not a sword principal warrior, but as a Marquis, he has also received the invitation. Master Su Ming asked our Marquis to recommend 3 sword principal experts. Hunjian Lord and Tanming Lord are on the list. And as for the last one, I recommended you to our Marquis. Jian Wushuang finally understood why Spirit Lord had come here. Swordsman, would you like to go to Sword Suppression Valley? Spirit Lord asked with a smile. Of course I'd like to. Jian Wushuang nodded without hesitation. Spirit Lord was not surprised by his reply. It would be a great opportunity for any sword principal warrior to watch the heart-killing sword shake and see thousands of swords salute. No one would refuse it. However, Spirit Lord did not know that the main reason Jian Wushuang accepted the invitation was that the heart-killing sword was the sword ancestor's magic weapon, and that he was a descendant of the bloodline of the sword ancestor. In that case, you can make some preparations and then go with me, Spirit Lord said. Jian Wushuang nodded, called Bing Hua to come in, and gave him some orders. Then he left with Spirit Lord. After traveling for a short while, they found themselves in front of a magnificent palace. The moment Jian Wushuang stepped into it, he saw a young man in a long silver robe, whose eyes sparkled with magic. Marquis. Both Spirit Lord and Jian Wushuang simultaneously addressed the young man. The silver-robed young man looked at Jian Wushuang and asked, Are you swordsman? Spirit Lord often talks about you. Our camp has many lords, but a Saint Realm expert can actually become a lord, and you're the only one. Spirit Lord has overestimated me, Jian Wushuang replied with modesty. Marquis Piaoxua did not respond to this but simply waved his hands while saying, Sit down please. Jian Wushuang sat by a long narrow table, and immediately greeted the 2 lords beside him. Hunjian Lord. Tianming Lord. Oh. In a polite manner, Hujian Lord and Tianming Lord, who had been awaiting his arrival, looked over at him and replied in succession, Bloodsword Lord. Then Marquis Piaoxua spoke again. You should have heard about this already. Master Su Ming sent me the invitation personally, so I don't dare to take it lightly. The 3 of you are the strongest sword principal experts in our camp, so don't make me lose face. We'll do our best, Jian Wushuang and the other 2 lords responded. All right. Marquis Piaoxua nodded, took out a token, and gave it to Hunjian Lord. In half a month, Sword Suppression Valley will open. You should set out as soon as possible. Jian Wushuang and the other 2 lords looked at each other, bowed and left. After they left the palace, the 3 lords got together. Hunjian Lord, you have been there before. Tell us more about Sword Suppression Valley, Tianming Lord said. Hunjian Lord had visited Sword Suppression Valley the last time it opened. It will take us several days to get there. Let's talk about it on the road, Hunjian Lord replied with a smile. Then, the 3 of them headed for Sword Suppression Valley. The reopening of Sword Suppression Valley provided a great opportunity for numerous sword principal experts in the Divine Land. Therefore, it also attracted the attention of other sword principal experts. 72 marquises all received the invitations from Master Su Ming, who was one of the 9 sovereigns. No one dared to refuse him, so each of the marquises recommended their 3 most excellent sword principal experts. Besides them, many solitary sword principal experts who were not under the control of the marquises but were famous for sword principal also received invitations. At that moment, a figure stood on an unknown mountain, which was outside of the territories that the 72 marquises controlled. He had a long sword on his back. Having silver-white hair and a mustache, He looked as if he had experienced many vicissitudes of life. His deep eyes seemed to contain an endless void. He sat with his legs crossed as he drank. Swish, 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 swish. The sound of wind breaking resounded. Instantly, a dozen figures appeared around the white-haired man. Those figures all were lords with mighty auras. They were led by a muscular elder, a superior lord. The leader looked at the white-haired man with a flicker of killing intent in his eyes. Jiannantian, you won't escape this time. Chapter 477 The Barrier. Chapter 477 The Barrier. Escape. The white-haired man, who casually sat drinking, raised his head and his thoughtful dark eyes fell on the muscular elder. He continued, I never did anything like that. Since that's the case, I'll be sending you to hell. The elder roared and billowed forward like flowing smoke. The men with the elder started attacking as well. At this moment, as the white-haired man finally stood up, a sliver of light shot out. At the same time, he drew his long sword and an immense sword essence immediately began to flow. A Dao weapon. Seeing the weapon the man held, the elder and the nearby lords looked greedy. They began fighting instantly. A fierce battle broke out in the blink of an eye. However, it only took a moment for the battle to be settled. On the hill, the white-haired man sheathed his sword and took out his wine again. Standing still, he looked up into the boundless sky, emotionless. Around him lay piles of bodies. The elder, a superior lord, was among them as well. It has been nearly 5 years. Did he achieve his goal of exterminating Holy Emperor Palace? The white-haired man murmured. At this moment, while thinking about this person he spoke of, he finally began to smile. Oh! Sword Suppression Valley, located among an unbroken string of mountains, was famous for suppressing the heart-killing sword. Usually, the valley was quiet, but with the 100-year event drawing near, the valley had recently become crowded. At the edge of the valley, there was a towering group of palaces. Naturally, this was where Su Ming, one of the 9 sovereigns, lived. In one of the palaces, a woman's voice was heard. Your Highness, the news from the guard says that a lot of warriors have gathered outside the valley, a purple-clothed woman said respectfully. She was talking to the handsome man in front of her. The man was so good-looking that many ladies would feel ashamed when looking at him. With his eminent status and overwhelming power, he was definitely a prominent figure. He was Su Ming, a man who was second only to the 3 ancestors and a personal disciple of the sword ancestor. Tell them to open the array and let the experts in. Make sure they are well received, Su Ming ordered, with a voice that was both attractive and stunning. Understood, Your Highness. The purple-clothed woman nodded. She took her eyes, which were filled with fervor and worship, off the man and left. Su Ming was left alone. He stood in silence with his hands behind him, his eyes fixed on a painting at the top of the palace. The painting was of an old man standing on a peak. While holding a long sword in his hand, the old man was looking down over everything with sharp eyes as if he stood above the whole world. Old man. Su Ming stared at the elder in the painting. His face twitched, and his eyes filled with hatred. It was really malicious of you to leave a fatal flaw in the heart-killing sword. However, I was lucky, so that trick didn't kill me. I guess that move is the last trump card of the heart-killing sword, right? Wait and see. Before long, I will take control of the heart-killing sword and replace you. Then I will be the new sword ancestor. Buzz! Suddenly, a wide channel appeared on the array in front of the warriors that had gathered at the valley entrance, and several people, led by the purple-clothed woman, walked out. So sorry to keep you waiting. Now, please come over here and show me your marquise token, said the woman. Following those words, the warriors formed a line and walked forward. Some of them had won some fame, but they all remained discreet and obedient when in the Sword Suppression Valley. After all, they were in a place ruled by Su Ming, one of the 9 sovereigns. Su Ming was powerful and had a good reputation. He did not have to invite the experts to his valley and share the rare opportunity involving the heart-killing sword's awakening with them, but he did. He even held a sword principle meeting for all the experts. Among the experts who were walking towards the woman one after another, Jian Wushuang, Hunjian Lord, and Tianming Lord were also waiting in line. While they were waiting, they noticed that not everyone was allowed to enter the valley. The conditions to enter the valley included an invitation or one of the 72 Marques's tokens, as well as one's own level of power. At the entry stood a golden puppet fighter, and the experts had to defeat the puppet to enter the valley. This was something like a test for entering the valley. In fact, everyone who had made their way to the valley was excellent in sword principle and should be able to pass this test. Otherwise, they would only embarrass themselves. This was also the reason why Marquis Piaoxue had chosen the 3 quotas with caution. No matter how many opportunities the chosen ones could get, he had to be sure they were good enough to at least get into the valley. Soon it was Jian Wushuang's and the 2 lords' turn. "We're the underlings of Marquis Piaoxue, and these are our tokens." Hunjian Lord handed the 3 tokens to the purple-clothed woman. "Fine. Then please have a try." The woman nodded to them and pointed at the puppet. Jian Wushuang and the lords exchanged a glance. Hunjian Lord was the first one to take his turn, and he quickly found himself in a fierce battle with the puppet. When fighting with the puppet, the realm, cultivation, power or comprehension in origin would not matter, only one's achievement in sword principle. Hunjian Lord effortlessly defeated the puppet with his 2nd-grade sword soul. Then it was Tianming Lord's turn. Though he had not awakened his sword soul yet, he had good achievements in sword principle and had mastered many 1st-grade sword techniques. After exchanging several moves with the puppet, he was able to beat it. Finally, it was Jian Wushuang's turn. Chapter 478 3 Sword Souls. Chapter 478 3 Sword Souls. Jian Wushuang planned to use his full strength against the puppet. Buzz! An enormous sword essence surged out as 2 giant sword soul phantoms appeared behind Jian Wushuang. The phantoms were almost 30 meters tall and contained a mighty sword essence. With the power of the sword souls, Jian Wushuang quickly defeated the puppet. The experts in the line were amazed when they saw Jian Wushuang's sword soul phantoms and how he defeated the puppet. Double sword souls, each 30 meters tall. Those are double 1st-grade sword souls. He has double 1st-grade sword souls? He is so talented. The experts discussed in amazement. Seeing Jian Wushuang's sword souls, the purple-clothed woman could not help but nod to herself. The representatives sent by Marquis Piaoxue are indeed powerful. You 3 please go this way. Jian Wushuang, Hunjian Lord, and Tianming Lord immediately followed the path and entered Sword Suppression Valley. As soon as they entered the valley, someone came to guide them. "Look, that is where the heart-killing sword is suppressed." Hunjian Lord pointed at a huge mountain in the distance. The mountain was shaped like a volcano, with a huge hole at the center, and the heart-killing sword was placed at the bottom. At his first glance of the mountain, Jian Wushuang felt an obscure sword essence coming from the bottom. The sword essence was like a sleeping dragon. Once it woke up, the world would be shaken. With that, Jian Wushuang also sensed the triple-kill sword on his back start to quiver. Jian Wushuang looked confused and tried his best to calm the sword down by holding the hilt tightly. In the end, he had to put the sword in his interspatial ring. Why is the triple-kill sword so excited? Jian Wushuang pondered. The sword had been with him since long ago when he left Sword Marquis Mansion and ventured to the outside world. It was like his dearest comrade, but he had never seen the sword become so excited before. Yes, so excited that it was as if it was meeting family. The triple-kill sword is a token to enter the ancestors' land. It may be related to the heart-killing sword somehow, Jian Wushuang thought. Sir, those are your residences. 3 days from now the heart-killing sword will wake up. Before that time, please concede to stay here. The attendant led them to a yard with many rooms. The rooms were made especially for the invited experts. Thanks. Hunjian Lord thanked the attendant. After the attendant left, Jian Wushuang and the lords gathered by a table in the room. Swordsman, Tianming Lord, get yourselves prepared in the next 3 days. We can't miss the rare opportunity of the heart-killing sword's awakening, said Hunjian Lord. Among the three, Hunjian Lord was the only one that had been here before. Hunjian Lord, I've heard that at that time there will be 1,000 sword salute here. What exactly is that like? What kind of opportunity are we looking at? Asked Tianming Lord. Well, after a moment of pondering, Hunjian Lord continued, I don't know how to describe it. It's a unique experience, so you will have to see it for yourself at that time. After hearing your words, I can't wait for the sword principal meeting to begin, Tianming Lord said and smiled. Jian Wushuang showed a faint smile as well. He shared the Lord's feeling. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these last few days, experts from every corner kept rushing to the valley. At this moment, outside the valley, a ragged man with a weather-beaten face walked forward slowly. He had a long sword on his back and looked like he was middle-aged, but his hair was gray. The man arrived at the entrance to the valley. Sir, please show me your invitation, said the purple-clothed woman. I don't have such a thing, the man answered. The woman pulled her face. The surrounding experts' eyes immediately fell on the man. The sword suppression valley was not accessible to everyone. Those who were in the valley were either recommended by their marquis or famous throughout the divine land, and received an invitation from Su Ming. Without a recommendation or an invitation, one could not enter. So without an invitation I can't get in? Asked the man in a flat tone. That's not completely true. The woman shook her head and added, Lord Su Ming has proclaimed that everyone with high achievements in sword principle will be allowed into the valley on condition that they can prove themselves. The man looked indifferent upon hearing the woman's words, but behind him, an overwhelming sword essence shot up, along with 3 towering figures. There were 3 sword soul phantoms standing side by side, and the center one was a first-grade sword soul that was over 30 meters high. On the left and right, the other 2 phantoms guarded the center one. They were over 24 meters tall and were second-grade sword souls. The 3 phantoms were surging with sword essence, enough to shock anyone in the world. He has 3 sword souls. Gosh! Who is he? The experts were aghast when they saw this scene. So was the women. How could he have 3 sword souls? The awakening of sword soul depended on one's talent in sword principle. An ordinary expert might awaken 1 sword soul at best, and in such cases they would be called a genius. When the sword ancestor's bloodline was at its peak, there had been a few people who had awoken their sword souls over the decades. The people with 2 sword souls had been even fewer. As for those with 3 sword souls, they were monsters. Now can I get in? The man's voice echoed through the valley. Chapter 479, A Fascinating Blow. Chapter 479. A Fascinating Blow. After a moment of silence, the purple-clothed woman nodded while saying, Since you have awakened 3 sword souls, you are definitely qualified for the sword principal meeting. The woman let the white-haired man pass. That made sense because few among the participants of the meeting had awakened even 1 sword soul, let alone 2. There were only 3 of them with 2 souls, including Jian Wushuang. The white-haired man was the first participant that had 3 sword souls so far. Being such a genius, the man was definitely qualified to join the meeting. While the man was heading toward Sword Suppression Valley, 2 intense gazes landed on him. He is Jian Nantian. Blood Mountain Marquis is looking all over the place for him. Who would think that he would come here? He really has guts. If only I could kill him. The 2 people currently talking were participants of the Sword Principle meeting as well, and both of them were experts in Sword Principle. They stared at the white-haired man intensely, like they were staring at some kind of treasure. It was a beautiful night. Jian Wushuang sat on the bed with his legs crossed. In front of him, the triple-kill sword shivered violently and restlessly. 3 days have passed and it's still the same. Jian Wushuang looked at the sword and shook his head. Right then a booming sound echoed through the silent night like thunder. Along with the sound, an overwhelming energy also swept over the area. Jian Wushuang raised his head in astonishment. Is a battle taking place here? He immediately put the triple kill sword back into his interspatial ring and left the room. Hunjian Lord exited his room as well. What's going on? Is there someone who dares to make trouble here? We're in Sword Suppression Valley, a place ruled by Su Ming, aren't we? Let's go and find out. Jian Wushuang Hunjian Lord and Tianming Lord rushed out and headed towards the sound. The boom had alarmed everyone in the valley, and a lot of experts had exited their rooms and moved towards the area. They could see 3 people standing side by side on a roof with their strong aura radiating outwards. The air surrounding them was filled with killing intent. Among the 3, 2 were superior lords, and the last was an advanced lord. Opposite the lords was a man with an ethereal aura, his white hair fluttering with the wind, and his hand behind his back. His long shadow under the moon gave him the appearance of a towering figure. He is. When Jian Wushuang caught the sight of the man, his eyes flickered with joy and surprise. Go to hell! Suddenly, the 3 lords shouted and drifted towards the man like ghosts. The moment they moved, the white-haired man acted as well. As he removed his long sword from his back, a surging power erupted from the blade. A Dao weapon! Is that sword a Dao weapon? How could a lord have such a weapon? The power of the sword shocked the experts who were watching, and their gazes were filled with greed. All of the people in the surroundings were experts in sword principle, so that sword, a Dao weapon, drove them crazy. 3 sword soul phantoms rose up when the white-haired man unsheathed his sword. The tallest phantom was 30 meters high, and seemed as if it was overlooking everything. The white-haired man made his move. It was a casual blow. A dazzling arc of light ran down the blade, so bright and fascinating that every onlooker was drawn to it. The experts were taken aback by the scene. They were being drawn into what they were seeing. Even the 3 lords who were going to attack the man were distracted by the fascinating blow. Before they could come back to their senses, the sword slashed their throats at an amazing speed. Pissin, pissin, pssh. With 3 sounds of a sword slashing flesh, the 3 lords stopped moving, frozen with horrified looks on their faces. The white-haired man resheathed his sword. The 3 lords' dead bodies fell backward to the ground once the sword was returned to its sheath. Horror! Shock! Those were the onlookers feeling. This man killed 2 superior lords and 1 advanced lord with 1 strike. How powerful! Is he a marquis? His attack was so stunning yet so terrifying. Everyone was filled with amazement. This guy, Hunjian Lord and Tianming Lord, widened their eyes. However, after seeing how the man killed those 3 guys, Jian Wushuang touched his nose with an odd look on his face. Boom! Suddenly, several figures with powerful auras approached the white-haired man, and the leading person was the purple-clothed woman, who had guided them into the valley. The woman had an unhappy expression on her face when she saw the dead bodies on the ground. Sir, you showed no respect to my lord by killing his guests under his eyes, the women scolded. The onlookers immediately looked toward the man. The man fetched out a bottle of wine, took a seat on the roof and started drinking. He showed no emotion to the woman's words as he replied, "They wanted to kill me, so I killed them." His words were flat and indifferent but stunned the woman. The onlookers put on a quaint face when they heard his words. Killing at will was not allowed in the valley. However, if it was a self-defense, it could be forgiven. After all, no one would just watch his opponents kill him without doing anything. Everyone present had seen the 3 lords try to kill the man, and how the man defended himself by killing them. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.